Alright, now it's time to talk about another class project. This time is an animatronic tentacle, or close enough to animatronic. For the vertebrae, I decided to go with the caps of milk gallon jugs. As you can see here, I mapped out 5 holes to drill into the cap. 4 holes, 1 for each direction, up, down, left, and right, and then a central hole so that it can truly be a hollow core for one tentacle as a proof of concept, and to have a core pass through for a tube tentacle as well as a 2-axle tentacle. I used cable ties of almost 37 inches in length, along with wire brads, tiny nails, to act as axles and anchors. Connecting these together, it would zigzag, so there's only 2 of the cable ties, like left and right on the first segment, and then up and down on the second segment, and so forth, so it can bend back and forth. Now this method requires you to string every segment, so after I strung it using 8-pound fishing line, I gave it a test, as you can see here. Alas, even though it seemed to be working decently, it still looked fairly janky, and after consulting my teacher as well as the curriculum, I found that I had modeled this tentacle after the inspiration, not the revised product. So with the inspiration, it was meant to work like this. The one piece of cable attached to 2 vertebrae using the anchors and allowing it to pivot in something like this kind of angle. But in practical use, sometimes the vertebrae try and make this formation as they rotate on the axis. To compensate for this, I cut the cable attachments in half and used the holes that I'd already put into them to make a new pivot point in the center, which acts more like this. And as you can see, even though it's not very pretty with the hot gluing, one on the outside, one on the inside, it still functions properly. And for the controlling mechanism, I went with the standard marionette 4-bar system, and then came for the final test of this method, and I think it turned out pretty good. So working on the second and the main tentacle, I used the same gallon milk jug lids with the same holes, but instead used plastic refrigerator tubing as the core. This removes the need for the cable ties connecting each vertebrae. And after I had all the segments assembled and strung up again with 8-pound fishing line, I gave it a test. For the second stage of the main tentacle, I made it the same way except for the core, which I used one of the cable tie. The cable tie made it so that it would only bend left and right, but under a lot less strain, so it can bend farther and easier, as I found when I tested it. Then it came time to attach both stages together and to test how it worked. I had passed the second stage's fishing line down through the refrigerator tubing so that it does not interfere or affect the first stage. And it appears to me to have been a success. But the fishing line hurts my fingers to pull on. So it came time to craft and create the pulley system to make it more animatronic and smooth in its choreography and puppeteering. I started off with whatever this thing is, pretty much a piece of trash I found at the side of the road, because it was both hollow and had some spindle-like ribbing that I figured would be perfect for a pulley. And for the second part of the pulley, I selected a DVD spindle, and it comes with a nifty little handle. In order to mount these two pulleys together, I took a board, drilled some holes into it, and placed in this plastic paintbrush handle from a used throwaway paintbrush I had because it would suit my needs. And then I attached all the pieces together using a toilet paper roll coated with aluminum tape as the core of the first pulley, and covered that with cardboard in order to attach it to the paintbrush in front and some chopsticks in back. I used the triangle system for the chopsticks for stability, and then I attached the second pulley using the nail system I created when I made Joshua's eyes from my critter puppet. And let's see how it works. As you can see, the top pulley swivels and spins while also manipulating the bottom pulley as I push it left and right, with lots of freedom of movement and ability to turn. With the basic pulley system finished, it came time to attach the tentacle to it. Now, in order to get the tension correct, I had to have the pulley a set distance away from the tentacle. So I used some wood doweling to maintain that tension and distance. And as for the second stage, that only had two directions and therefore strands of fishing line, I used a metal rod for a marionette system, so that one hand could be controlling the pulleys and the other hand using the marionette to get the two stages of the tentacle to move in different directions. Now, as you can see here, I added a little bit of the tubing suspended over the top two lines that go to the top pulley in order to help keep the fishing line on the pulley. That is the same reason why I chose the paintbrush handle, because of this hole lying the same for the lower pulley. However, the tension was pulling and warping the pulley system, causing even more of those top strands to come off the pulley. In order to fix this, I used ice screws, as you can see here, to help keep that line on the pulley. Also, the tension was so great that the handle that made from chopsticks was breaking, and I had to combine a few methods of hot glue, drilling, and putting the chopsticks into the handle instead of just glued on the handle, wrapping it with tin wire, and then placing some thin plastic over it and heating it up so it's melted and contracted over the wood and wire and glue, sealing it together. I also had to drill a screw down through the plastic paintbrush handle to keep it from ripping out. As for the tension itself, the best method I found was to drill a hole into the pulley and then use a nail with the fishing line tied around it like a peg, so I can pull it taut and stick in the peg. With this precarious and admittedly kind of trash looking apparatus, but functional, at least that was my hope, I decided to test it. And I got some decent footage of the repeated tests and finished product. I did find with this first test that even with some clamps holding it onto the railing, that it had a tendency to pull forward and away from me. So for the second test, I strapped a weight to the back which counterbalanced it to pull it into me, so I would rest the pulley part of it against my chest.